Welcome to today's episode of Ancient Mysteries Revealed. Picture this. 2 million years ago, on the vast savannas of East Africa, a small group of early humans huddles around the dying embers of a lightning-struck tree. The night predators are circling, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. But something extraordinary is about to happen. One of these ancient ancestors reaches out, not to flee from the fire like every other creature, but to feed it. With trembling hands, they add dry grass to the flames, and in that moment, everything changes. This isn't just about fire. You're about to discover how our ancestors conquered the three fundamental challenges that separated humans from every other species on Earth: mastering fire, revolutionizing stone tools, and developing survival strategies so sophisticated they would dominate the planet. How did creatures with no claws, fangs, or natural armor become the apex predators of their world? What drove them to take risks that other animals wouldn't dare attempt? How did they transform from vulnerable prey into master hunters capable of bringing down massive woolly mammoths? The answers lie buried in ancient archaeological sites, encoded in fossilized bones, and hidden within the very stones our ancestors crafted with impossible precision. Join us as we unravel the greatest survival story ever told. The epic journey of how early humans didn't just survive in a hostile world, but conquered it entirely. Chapter 1. The spark that changed everything. Lightning splits the African sky, illuminating the endless grasslands where our story begins. You're standing in the Rift Valley, 2 million years ago, watching as electricity from the heavens strikes a lone acacia tree. The resulting fire spreads quickly through the dry grass, sending animals fleeing in all directions. But among the chaos, something unprecedented happens. A small group of early humans doesn't run away. Instead, they move closer. Fire has existed on Earth for over 400 million years, long before any mammal walked the planet. When terrestrial plants first evolved and atmospheric oxygen reached the critical 15% threshold, wildfires became a natural force shaping ecosystems worldwide. For countless millennia, every living creature had the same relationship with fire: fear and avoidance. It was the destroyer, the force that consumed everything in its path. But early humans were different. Where others saw destruction, they glimpsed opportunity. Archaeological evidence from sites like Chesawanya in Kenya suggests that by 1.4 million years ago, our ancestors were already experimenting with fire's possibilities. The evidence comes in the form of red clay clasts that could only have been heated to 400 degrees Celsius, far too hot for natural bushfires. The transformation didn't happen overnight. The relationship between humans and fire evolved through distinct phases, each representing a quantum leap in cognitive ability. First came the opportunistic phase, where early humans simply scavenged fire from natural sources. Picture your ancestors following in the wake of lightning strikes, carefully gathering glowing embers and carrying them back to their camps. This phase required unprecedented forward thinking. Unlike any other animal, humans began to understand that fire could be preserved, transported, and maintained. They learned to feed it with dry grass, twigs, and animal dung, materials that burned slowly and produced less smoke. The cognitive leap here cannot be overstated. They were planning for future needs in ways that no other species had ever attempted. The evidence for this early fire use comes from sites across Africa. At Swartkrans in South Africa, archaeologists discovered burned bones with cut marks, clear proof that early humans were using fire to process their food. The bones show a specific pattern of burning that suggests controlled use rather than accidental exposure to wildfires. But controlling scavenged fire was just the beginning. The real revolution came when humans learned to create fire at will. The earliest evidence for deliberate fire-making dates back nearly 1 million years to sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Here, archaeologists found microscopic traces of wood ash deep within the cave, far from any natural fire source. The ash was concentrated in specific areas, suggesting organized hearths rather than random burning. Creating fire required an entirely new level of technological sophistication. Early humans had to understand the fire triangle: fuel, oxygen, and heat. They experimented with different techniques, from the friction method using fire plows and fire drills to the percussion method using flint and pyrite. Each technique demanded precise understanding of materials, pressure, and timing. The mastery of fire-making represented more than just technological advancement. It was a cognitive revolution. Humans had to develop mental models of cause and effect, plan multiple steps ahead, and maintain focus through repetitive, physically demanding processes. Making fire with primitive tools could take 20 to 30 minutes of continuous effort, requiring persistence that other animals simply didn't possess. Fire's impact on human evolution was profound and immediate. For the first time in Earth's history, a species could extend its active hours beyond daylight. Firelight allowed humans to work, socialize, and plan during the long African nights. This extension of productive time accelerated cultural development and social bonding in ways that were impossible for other species. The cooking revolution followed quickly. When humans began applying fire to food, they unlocked nutritional resources that had been previously inaccessible. Cooked meat was easier to digest and provided more calories per gram than raw meat. Root vegetables, previously too tough and fibrous to process efficiently, became staple foods when roasted over coals. This dietary enhancement had dramatic biological consequences. The additional calories and improved nutrient absorption supported the growth of larger, more energy-hungry brains. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham argues that cooking was so crucial to human development that we became obligately dependent on it around 1.9 million years ago, meaning we literally cannot survive on raw food alone. Fire also provided protection that transformed human settlement patterns. For millions of years, early humans had been vulnerable prey animals, forced to sleep in trees or caves to avoid predators. Fire changed this equation entirely. A campfire could deter even the largest carnivores, allowing humans to establish ground-level settlements in optimal locations near water sources and game trails. The psychological impact was equally revolutionary. Fire represented humanity's first major victory over the natural world. Unlike every other species, humans were no longer completely at the mercy of environmental forces. They had learned to harness one of nature's most powerful elements and bend it to their will. Evidence of this fire mastery spreads across the archaeological record. At Gesher Benat Yaakov in Israel, archaeologists discovered over a dozen hearths dating back 790,000 years. The hearths contained burned seeds, wood, and stone tools, suggesting complex, organized use of fire for multiple purposes. This wasn't just about warmth or cooking. Humans were using fire for tool production, food processing, and social activities. The spread of fire technology accelerated human migration in unprecedented ways. With fire, early humans could venture into colder climates that had been previously uninhabitable. The earliest evidence of human occupation in Europe, dating to around 800,000 years ago, coincides with archaeological evidence of controlled fire use. This chapter of human evolution teaches us something profound about innovation and risk-taking. While every other species evolved physical adaptations to survive in hostile environments, humans chose a different path. They developed technology. They took the dangerous, unpredictable force of fire and transformed it into humanity's first great tool. The mastery of fire didn't just change what humans could do. It changed what humans were. It transformed them from just another African mammal into something entirely new, a species that could reshape its environment rather than simply adapt to it. This was the spark that ignited human civilization. Chapter 2. When rocks became weapons, You're crouched beside an ancient riverbank in East Africa, 2.6 million years ago, watching as one of your ancestors picks up a fist-sized chunk of volcanic rock. What happens next will revolutionize the planet. With deliberate precision, they strike the rock against another stone, sending sharp flakes scattering across the ground. In that moment, the first tool is born. This scene represents one of the most significant technological breakthroughs in Earth's history. For billions of years, life had been shaped entirely by biological evolution, the slow process of genetic adaptation across generations. But with the first deliberately crafted stone tool, a new force entered the world: cumulative cultural evolution. Humans could now modify their capabilities within a single lifetime. The earliest stone tools, known as the Old Owen industry, appear in the archaeological record around 2.6 million years ago at sites like Gona in Ethiopia. These tools seem primitive by modern standards. Simple choppers, scrapers, and cutting implements created by striking one rock against another to produce sharp edges. But their creation required a cognitive revolution that separated early humans from every other species on the planet. Creating even the simplest stone tool demands several sophisticated mental abilities working in concert. The toolmaker must envision the final product before beginning, understand the properties of different rock types, predict how force will fracture stone along natural planes, and maintain focus through a complex sequence of precisely controlled strikes. This represents a level of abstract thinking and manual dexterity that no other animal has ever achieved. The choice of raw materials reveals the depth of early human understanding. Toolmakers preferentially selected specific types of stone: volcanic glass, fine-grained basalt, quartzite, and chert, materials that fracture predictably and hold sharp edges. This selectivity demonstrates that early humans understood the relationship between mineral composition and tool performance, knowledge that could only have developed through generations of experimentation and cultural transmission. But the Old Owen was just the beginning. Around 1.7 million years ago, a technological revolution occurred that would define human development for the next 1.5 million years. At sites like FLK West in Tanzania's Olduvai Gorge, archaeologists discovered something unprecedented: the first bifacial hand axes of the Acheulean industry. The leap from Old Owen choppers to Acheulean hand axes represents one of the most dramatic technological advances in human history. While Old Owen tools were created by removing a few flakes from one side of a rock, Acheulean hand axes required systematic flaking on both sides to create symmetrical, teardrop-shaped implements with carefully designed cutting edges. This bifacial technology demanded an exponential increase in cognitive complexity. Acheulean toolmakers had to mentally rotate three-dimensional objects, understand the geometric relationships between different surfaces, and execute hundreds of precisely controlled strikes in the correct sequence. The level of planning and spatial reasoning required approaches that of modern humans. The hand axe became humanity's signature tool, appearing in virtually identical forms across vast geographic ranges and immense time spans. From the tip of South Africa to the forests of Europe, from India to the Middle East, Acheulean hand axes show remarkable consistency in design and proportion. This standardization across such enormous distances and time periods indicates that toolmaking knowledge was being transmitted culturally with unprecedented fidelity. The longevity of Acheulean technology is staggering. For over 1.4 million years, humans continued to produce hand axes with essentially the same design. This represents the longest-running technological tradition in human history, a period so vast that it encompasses dozens of modern human lifespans. The consistency suggests that hand axe production had become deeply embedded in human culture and possibly even influenced by genetic factors. Archaeological evidence reveals that hand axes served multiple functions beyond simple cutting and chopping. where pattern analysis shows they were used for butchering large animals, processing plant materials, digging in soil, and even working wood. Some researchers propose that hand axes were also used as projectile weapons, thrown like deadly spinning discs into herds of animals. The production process itself became increasingly sophisticated over time. Later Acheulean toolmakers developed the level technique, a revolutionary approach that involved preparing stone cores to produce flakes of predetermined size and shape. This technique represents a fundamental shift in thinking. Rather than simply modifying natural stones, humans were now engineering the entire production process. The level technique required even more advanced cognitive abilities. Toolmakers had to envision the final product, work backward through the necessary steps, and execute a complex sequence of preparatory strikes before producing the desired flake. This level of premeditation and abstract thinking approaches modern human cognitive abilities. Stone tool production sites provide fascinating insights into early human social behavior. At locations like Elorgesailie in Kenya, archaeologists have discovered extensive workshops where groups of early humans gathered to produce tools. These sites contain thousands of hand axes in various stages of completion, along with the waste flakes from their manufacture. The organization of these workshop sites suggests sophisticated social cooperation. Raw materials were transported from sources up to 12 kilometers away, indicating planning and possibly division of labor. Skilled toolmakers may have taught others, creating the first educational institutions in human history. The concentration of activities at specific locations also suggests that early humans were beginning to establish semi-permanent base camps. The geographic distribution of Acheulean tools tells the story of human expansion. Across the Old World, the technology appears first in Africa around 1.7 million years ago, then spreads to Asia and Europe as early humans migrated outward. Interestingly, the hand axe tradition never reached East Asia, where early humans developed different tool technologies. This geographic variation provides insights into the cultural diversification that accompanied human dispersal. The precision required for stone tool production drove the evolution of uniquely human anatomical features. The manipulation of stone tools demanded increased manual dexterity, leading to the evolution of more sophisticated hand anatomy. The precision grip, opposition of thumb to fingertips, and fine motor control that characterize modern human hands all evolved in response to tool-making demands. Neurological changes accompanied these physical adaptations. Stone tool production activated the same brain regions involved in language processing, suggesting that tool-making and communication co-evolved. The complex sequencing, pattern recognition, and fine motor control required for stone tool production may have provided the neurological foundation for the later development of human language. The social implications of stone tool technology cannot be overstated. For the first time in Earth's history, a species was accumulating technological knowledge across generations. Each generation could build upon the innovations of their predecessors, leading to an accelerating spiral of technological advancement. This cumulative cultural evolution would eventually enable humans to develop technologies far beyond what any individual could invent in a single lifetime. The standardization of tool designs across vast geographic ranges also suggests the emergence of cultural identity. Different regions developed subtle variations in hand axe style, possibly representing the first cultural traditions. These technological traditions created group identity and may have facilitated long-distance trade and cultural exchange. By the end of the Acheulean period, around 300,000 years ago, stone tool technology had become incredibly sophisticated. Toolmakers were producing implements with cutting edges sharper than modern surgical scalpels, complex hafted tools that combined stone blades with wooden handles, and specialized implements designed for specific tasks. The mastery of stone tool technology represents humanity's second great conquest over the natural world. Where fire gave humans control over energy, stone tools gave them control over materials. Together, these technologies created a positive feedback loop that accelerated human development and enabled our ancestors to transform from vulnerable prey animals into the planet as dominant predators. Chapter 3. The Art of Staying Alive. Survival in the ancient world required more than just tools and fire. It demanded a complete reimagining of how a species could exist on Earth. You re-witnessing the birth of human ingenuity as our ancestors developed survival strategies so revolutionary that they transformed the very nature of life itself. 2 million years ago, early humans faced a survival challenge unlike any other species had ever encountered. They possessed none of the physical advantages that typically determine success in the natural world. They couldn't outrun predators like gazelles, couldn't overpower prey like lions, and lacked the protective armor of rhinoceros or the climbing abilities of their primate relatives. Yet somehow, these seemingly disadvantaged creatures would not only survive, but eventually dominate every ecosystem on the planet. The key lay in their ability to think beyond immediate physical limitations and develop complex, multi-layered survival strategies. While other animals relied on instinct and individual capabilities, early humans pioneered something entirely new: cooperative intelligence and cultural adaptation. The foundation of human survival strategy was mobility combined with detailed environmental knowledge. Unlike other primates who remained in familiar territories, early humans developed sophisticated migration patterns that maximized access to resources while minimizing exposure to dangers. Archaeological evidence from sites like Kandjara in Kenya shows that groups were transporting stone tools and raw materials across distances of up to 12 kilometers, indicating planned movements between resource-rich areas. This mobility wasn't random wandering. It represented the world's first systematic resource management strategy. Early humans developed mental maps of vast territories, tracking seasonal changes in water availability, plant fruiting cycles, animal migration patterns, and weather conditions. This environmental knowledge had to be transmitted culturally across generations, creating humanity's first educational systems. The sophistication of early human environmental knowledge becomes apparent when we examine their site selection criteria. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans consistently chose locations that provided multiple strategic advantages: proximity to water sources, access to stone tool materials, elevated positions for surveillance, natural windbreaks, and escape routes from predators. These site selection patterns reveal the emergence of risk assessment capabilities that far exceeded those of any other species. Early humans weren't just reacting to immediate threats. They were anticipating potential dangers and proactively positioning themselves to minimize risk. This represents a cognitive revolution in how life could interact with environmental challenges. Water management became one of the most critical survival skills. In the variable climate of ancient Africa, water sources could disappear for months during dry seasons. Early humans developed techniques for locating underground water, reading environmental signs that indicated hidden springs, and possibly even primitive water storage methods. Some sites show evidence of modified natural depressions that may have served as seasonal water collection points. The development of shelter construction marked another major advancement in human survival strategy. While other animals sought existing natural shelters, early humans began modifying their environment to create protective structures. Archaeological evidence from sites like Terra Amata in France shows that early humans were constructing organized campsites with windbreaks, defined activity areas, and strategic placement of hearths. These early shelters weren't just physical structures. They represented the beginning of human architecture and spatial organization. The positioning of hearths, tool production areas, food processing zones, and sleeping areas shows that early humans were thinking systematically about workflow efficiency and social organization within their living spaces. Food procurement strategies evolved far beyond simple hunting and gathering. Early humans developed sophisticated understanding of plant toxicology, learning to identify which plant parts were safe to eat, which required processing to remove toxins, and which could be used for medicinal purposes. This knowledge was so complex that it required cultural transmission across generations. No individual could discover it all through personal experimentation without dying from poisoning. The relationship between early humans and fire extended far beyond cooking and warmth. Fire became a multi-purpose survival tool used for landscape management, hunting strategies, tool production, and predator deterrence. Early humans learned to use controlled burns to create favorable hunting conditions, clear travel routes, and encourage the growth of preferred plant species. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans developed sophisticated hunting strategies that leveraged their unique combination of intelligence, cooperation, and technology. Rather than relying on individual strength or speed, they used coordinated group tactics, environmental manipulation, and technological advantages to successfully hunt animals much larger and more powerful than themselves. The development of persistence hunting represents one of the most remarkable adaptations in human survival strategy. By combining endurance running with systematic tracking, early humans could literally run their prey to exhaustion over many hours or even days. This technique exploited humans' unique advantages in thermoregulation and endurance, while neutralizing the speed and strength advantages of their prey. Seasonal adaptation strategies became increasingly sophisticated as humans spread into diverse environments. Different seasons required completely different survival approaches, food sources, shelter types, and activity patterns. Early humans developed complex annual cycles that synchronized their behavior with environmental rhythms in ways that maximized resource availability while minimizing exposure to seasonal hazards. The emergence of food storage and preservation techniques marked a crucial advancement in survival strategy. Rather than consuming resources immediately, early humans learned to process and store food for future consumption. Evidence from various sites suggests they developed techniques for drying meat, processing plant materials for long-term storage, and possibly even primitive fermentation processes. Risk diversification became a central principle of human survival strategy. Rather than specializing in a single food source or survival technique, early humans maintained diverse portfolios of skills, knowledge, and resources. This approach provided resilience against environmental fluctuations that could eliminate any single resource or strategy. The development of trade and resource exchange networks created survival advantages that transcended individual group capabilities. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans were exchanging materials, tools, and presumably knowledge across distances of hundreds of kilometers. These exchange networks created redundancy and access to specialized resources that enhanced survival prospects for all participating groups. Medical knowledge and healing practices began emerging as crucial survival skills. Early humans developed understanding of basic wound treatment, medicinal plants, and possibly even primitive surgical techniques. Archaeological evidence suggests they were caring for injured and disabled group members, indicating that survival had become a collective rather than purely individual concern. The concept of collective security emerged as early humans learned that group survival often trumped individual advantage. Archaeological sites show evidence of shared resources, communal food preparation, and coordinated defense strategies. This cooperation created survival advantages that enabled human groups to survive challenges that would have eliminated individual humans. Social organization evolved to support increasingly complex survival strategies. The coordination required for large-scale hunting, resource management, and territorial defense necessitated leadership structures, communication systems, and conflict resolution mechanisms. These social innovations created survival capabilities that far exceeded the sum of individual human abilities. Early humans also developed sophisticated predator avoidance strategies that went far beyond simple flight responses. They learned to read environmental signs that indicated predator presence, developed techniques for moving quietly through dangerous terrain, and created early warning systems that enhanced group security. The accumulation and transmission of survival knowledge became one of humanity's greatest advantages. Unlike other species that relied primarily on genetic programming and individual learning, early humans developed cultural systems that allowed survival knowledge to accumulate across generations. Each generation could build upon the survival discoveries of their predecessors, creating an accelerating spiral of survival capability. Perhaps most remarkably, early humans began to exhibit evidence-based thinking about survival challenges. Rather than relying purely on trial and error or traditional practices, they appeared to have developed systematic approaches to testing and refining survival strategies. This proto-scientific thinking enabled them to adapt to novel challenges and continuously improve their survival capabilities. By the end of this developmental period, early humans had transformed from vulnerable prey animals into sophisticated survivors capable of thriving in diverse and challenging environments. They had developed not just individual survival skills, but entire systems of knowledge, cooperation, and cultural adaptation that would enable them to spread across the globe and eventually dominate every ecosystem they encountered. The survival strategies developed by early humans represent more than just clever adaptations. They constitute humanity's third great conquest over the natural world. Combined with fire and stone tools, these survival innovations created a new form of life on Earth, a species whose survival depended not on physical evolution, but on cultural and technological evolution. Chapter 4. The Great Hunt begins. The African dawn breaks across the savannah as you witness one of the most pivotal moments in human evolution, the transition from scavenger to hunter. A small group of early humans carefully approaches a massive elephant carcass. But this time, they're not just scavenging the remains of another predator's kill. They're standing around an animal they brought down themselves through cunning, cooperation, and unprecedented strategic thinking. The journey from scavenging to active hunting represents a fundamental shift in human ecology and consciousness. For millions of years, early human ancestors had filled the ecological niche of opportunistic scavengers, following in the wake of large predators and competing with vultures and hyenas for access to meat. This lifestyle kept them vulnerable, reactive, and dependent on the hunting success of other species. The transformation to active predation required a complete reimagining of human capabilities and social organization. Archaeological evidence from sites like FLK-Zinj in Tanzania, Soldovai Gorge, reveals the earliest evidence of organized hunting behavior, dating back nearly 2 million years. The bone assemblages show clear patterns of systematic butchery, with cut marks indicating that humans had primary access to fresh carcasses rather than scavenged remains. The development of hunting strategies leveraged humanity's unique combination of cognitive abilities, technological innovation, and social cooperation. Unlike solitary predators that relied on individual strength and speed, or pack hunters that used coordinated attacks, early humans pioneered entirely new approaches that exploited their distinctive advantages in planning, tool use, and environmental manipulation. Persistence hunting emerged as one of the most remarkable hunting innovations in the animal kingdom. This technique exploited humans' unique physiology for long-distance running, superior cooling through sweating, and exceptional endurance. Archaeological evidence and ethnographic studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies suggest that early humans could track animals for hours or even days, forcing their prey into exhaustion through relentless pursuit. The effectiveness of persistence hunting lay in its systematic exploitation of physiological differences between humans and their prey. Most African mammals are adapted for brief bursts of high-speed running, but quickly overheat during sustained exertion. Humans, with their efficient bipedal locomotion and sophisticated thermoregulation, could maintain pursuit indefinitely until their prey collapsed from heat exhaustion. This hunting strategy required unprecedented levels of cognitive sophistication. Successful persistence hunting demanded expert tracking skills, detailed knowledge of animal behavior, understanding of terrain and weather conditions, and the ability to predict animal movement patterns hours in advance. Hunters had to read subtle environmental signs, disturb vegetation, scout analysis, wind direction changes to maintain pursuit over vast distances. The social coordination required for group hunting drove major advances in human communication and cooperation. Large game hunting often involved dozens of participants working in carefully orchestrated coordination. Archaeological evidence from sites like Schigningen in Germany reveals sophisticated hunting equipment, including wooden spears over 400,000 years old, indicating that early humans were engaging in complex, coordinated attacks on large animals. These group hunting strategies required new forms of social organization and leadership. Someone had to coordinate the hunt, assign roles to different participants, and make split-second decisions about tactics and timing. The emergence of temporary leadership roles during hunts may have provided the foundation for more complex social hierarchies and governance systems. The development of specialized hunting tools marked a major technological advancement beyond basic stone implements. Early humans created composite tools that combined multiple materials, stone points hafted to wooden shafts, weighted spear throwers that increased projectile force, and specialized cutting implements designed for specific butchery tasks. Each tool required understanding of physics, material science, and engineering principles. Archaeological sites reveal increasing sophistication in hunting tool production over time. The Levelwurst technique for producing standardized stone points demonstrates that early humans were pre-planning tool production with specific hunting applications in mind. The consistency of point shapes across vast geographic regions suggests that hunting tool designs were being transmitted culturally with remarkable fidelity. The strategic use of environmental features transformed hunting from a simple pursuit activity into complex landscape manipulation. Early humans learned to use natural terrain features, cliffs, narrow valleys, water crossings, to channel and trap their prey. Archaeological sites like Boxgrove in England show evidence of hunting strategies that exploited seasonal animal migration routes and predictable behavior patterns. Fire became an increasingly important hunting tool, used to drive animals toward ambush points, clear vegetation for better visibility, and possibly even create grass fires that could disorient and panic herds. The controlled use of fire for hunting purposes required sophisticated understanding of wind patterns, fire behavior, and animal psychology. The targeting of increasingly large and dangerous prey demonstrates growing confidence and sophistication in hunting capabilities. Sites from this period show evidence of successful hunts of elephants, rhinoceros, and other megafauna that pose significant risks to human hunters. The willingness to confront such dangerous prey indicates that early humans had developed hunting strategies sophisticated enough to minimize risk while maximizing success rates. Seasonal hunting strategies evolved to exploit the annual cycles of animal behavior and environmental conditions. Early humans learned to time their hunts to coincide with animal migrations, mating seasons, and periods of vulnerability. This required complex calendrical knowledge and the ability to plan hunting activities months in advance. The processing and distribution of large game required new forms of social cooperation and resource sharing. A single large animal could provide more meat than a small group could consume before spoilage, necessitating systems for preservation, distribution, and storage. Archaeological evidence suggests that successful hunts became focal points for larger social gatherings and resource exchange. Hunting success created new forms of social stratification and prestige. Successful hunters gained status within their groups, potentially influencing mate selection, leadership roles, and resource access. This connection between hunting prowess and social status may have driven the evolution of increasingly sophisticated hunting techniques and tool technologies. The nutritional benefits of increased meat consumption had profound effects on human physiology and development. High-quality protein from hunted animals supported brain growth and development, while the processing and cooking of meat made nutrients more bioavailable. This dietary enhancement may have accelerated the cognitive evolution that enabled increasingly sophisticated hunting strategies. Regional hunting specializations emerged as human populations adapted to different environments and prey species. Arctic populations developed techniques for hunting marine mammals through ice, while forest dwellers specialized in canopy hunting and forest game tracking. These regional adaptations demonstrate the flexibility of human hunting strategies and their ability to exploit diverse ecological niches. The development of hunting rituals and spiritual practices suggests that hunting had become more than just a subsistence activity. Archaeological evidence of deliberate animal burials, decorated hunting implements, and organized bone deposits indicates that hunting had acquired symbolic and spiritual significance that went beyond simple food procurement. Long-distance hunting expeditions became increasingly common as early humans developed the logistical capabilities to support extended hunting trips. These expeditions required sophisticated planning for food, water, tools, and navigation over unfamiliar territory. The success of such expeditions demonstrates remarkable advances in human, organizational abilities, and environmental knowledge. The emergence of hunting as a primary subsistence strategy fundamentally altered human ecology and social organization. Unlike scavenging, which was reactive and opportunistic, hunting was proactive and strategic. This shift from reactive to proactive resource acquisition represents a major transition in human evolution and consciousness. Hunting success created positive feedback loops that accelerated human development. Successful hunts provided resources for tool production, supported larger group sizes, and freed time for technological innovation. These advantages enabled more sophisticated hunting strategies, which in turn provided greater resources and opportunities for further development. By the end of this period, early humans had transformed from marginal scavengers into apex predators capable of taking any animal on the African continent. This transformation represents humanity's emergence as a major ecological force and sets the stage for their eventual expansion across the globe as master hunters and ecosystem dominators. Chapter 5. When winter came calling, the bitter winds of the Ice Age sweep across Europe as you witness an extraordinary moment in human history. Against all odds, small groups of early humans are not just surviving but thriving in conditions that would challenge even modern humans with all their technological advantages. The year's 800,000 years ago, and humanity is about to conquer its greatest environmental challenge yet, the frozen world of Pleistocene Europe. The expansion of early humans into temperate and subarctic environments represents one of the most remarkable adaptations in the history of life on Earth. Unlike other African species that remain confined to tropical zones, early humans developed the technological and cultural innovations necessary to survive in environments with freezing temperatures, limited daylight, and seasonal resource scarcity. The journey to these hostile environments wasn't accidental. It was driven by population pressure, resource competition, and the human tendency toward exploration and expansion. Archaeological evidence from sites like Manisi in Georgia shows that early humans were establishing populations outside Africa as early as 1.8 million years ago. But these early expansions were limited to relatively warm regions with favorable climates. The real test came with the advance and retreat of Pleistocene ice sheets. which created environmental conditions unlike anything humans had previously encountered. Temperatures could drop 20 to 30 degrees below modern levels. Ice sheets covered vast territories, and the familiar African ecosystem was replaced by mammoth steppes, boreal forests, and tundra landscapes. Surviving these conditions required revolutionary advances in clothing technology. While archaeological evidence for ancient clothing is limited due to organic material decomposition, indirect evidence suggests that early humans developed sophisticated garment production using animal hides, furs, and possibly woven plant materials. The creation of fitted clothing that provided insulation while maintaining mobility represented a major technological achievement. The production of effective cold-weather clothing required multiple interconnected technologies. Humans needed to master hide processing techniques that preserve flexibility while providing insulation, develop tools for cutting and shaping garments, and create fastening systems that secured clothing while allowing for adjustment and repair. Archaeological sites from this period show increasingly sophisticated bone needles, hide scrapers, and cutting implements designed specifically for textile production. Shelter construction became critically important in environments where natural protection was limited and exposure could be fatal within hours. Early humans developed techniques for building insulated structures using available materials, mammoth bones, hides, stones, and timber. Sites like Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic reveal sophisticated construction techniques that created warm, weatherproof shelters capable of supporting extended occupation. These early shelters weren't just basic windbreaks. They were engineered structures that demonstrated understanding of insulation principles, air circulation, and structural stability. The positioning of hearths, smoke management systems, and storage areas shows that early humans were thinking systematically about interior climate control and space utilization. Fire management became exponentially more critical in cold environments. Not only did humans need to maintain fires for cooking and warmth, but they had to develop fuel procurement and storage strategies that would sustain them through months-long winters. This required identifying and stockpiling appropriate fuel sources, developing techniques for keeping fires burning through extreme weather, and creating backup fire-starting methods when primary techniques failed. The challenge of fuel procurement in cold environments drove innovations in resource management and storage. Early humans learned to identify which woods burned efficiently in cold conditions, developed techniques for processing and drying fuel materials, and created storage systems that protected combustible materials from moisture and snow. Some sites show evidence of substantial fuel stockpiles that would have required months of advanced preparation. Dietary adaptations became essential for surviving in environments where plant foods were scarce or unavailable for extended periods. Cold-adapted humans developed strategies for processing and preserving animal foods that maximize caloric intake and nutritional value. This included techniques for rendering fats, preserving meat through freezing and drying, and processing bones and organs that provided essential nutrients unavailable in muscle meat alone. The hunting of cold-adapted megafauna required entirely new strategies and technologies. Animals like woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, and cave bears were far larger and more dangerous than African prey, but they also provided enormous quantities of meat, fat, and materials that could sustain groups through entire winters. Successfully hunting these animals required sophisticated planning, coordination, and specialized equipment. Archaeological evidence from sites like Hunnic shows that early humans were creating wooden hunting spears specifically designed for taking large, cold-adapted prey. These weapons were engineered with specific weight distributions, point designs, and hafting techniques that maximize penetration and structural integrity when confronting massive animals. The social organization required for cold weather survival drove major advances in human cooperation and resource sharing. Unlike in warmer climates where individuals could survive independently for extended periods, Cold environments make group cooperation a matter of life and death. Successful winter survival required coordinated hunting, shared shelter construction, communal food preparation, and systematic resource allocation. These cooperation requirements led to new forms of social organization and group decision-making. Archaeological evidence suggests that cold-adapted human groups developed more complex leadership structures, resource allocation systems, and conflict resolution mechanisms. The survival of the entire group depended on effective coordination and cooperation, creating selective pressure for enhanced social skills and cultural institutions. Navigation and wayfinding became critically important skills as early humans moved through unfamiliar landscapes with limited visibility and rapidly changing conditions. Cold environments often lacked the familiar landmarks and navigation cues that humans had relied upon in African environments. Successful cold weather groups developed sophisticated techniques for navigation using stars, wind patterns, animal behavior, and geographic features. The development of seasonal migration strategies allowed human groups to exploit different resources throughout the annual cycle while avoiding the most extreme conditions. Archaeological evidence suggests that some groups developed complex annual movement patterns that took advantage of seasonal resource availability while minimizing exposure to deadly winter conditions. Food storage and preservation techniques became essential for surviving months-long periods when fresh food was unavailable. Early humans developed methods for processing and storing meat, fat, and plant materials that could sustain them through extended winters. Some sites show evidence of organized storage areas with hundreds of kilograms of preserved food materials. The psychological challenges of cold weather survival required new forms of social support and cultural adaptation. Long winters with limited daylight, confined living conditions, and constant survival pressure created unprecedented stress on human groups. Successful cold-adapted populations developed cultural practices, social rituals, and group activities that maintain morale and social cohesion during difficult periods. Cold weather tool technologies evolved to address the specific challenges of frozen environments. Tools had to function reliably in sub-freezing temperatures, with materials that remained workable despite extreme cold. Early humans developed specialized techniques for working stone, bone, and wood in conditions where traditional tool-making methods might fail. The mastery of cold weather survival represented more than just environmental adaptation. It demonstrated humanity's ability to use culture and technology to transcend biological limitations. Unlike other species that required genetic evolution to adapt to new environments, humans could develop the necessary survival technologies within a few generations. This achievement opened vast new territories for human expansion and established patterns of technological innovation that would characterize human development for millennia to come. The successful colonization of cold environments proved that humans could adapt to virtually any terrestrial environment through cultural and technological innovation rather than biological evolution. Chapter 6. The Dawn of Cooperation Picture. Yourself observing a remarkable scene that unfolds 500,000 years ago along the shores of an ancient lake. A group of early humans has surrounded a massive straight-tusked elephant, an animal 10 times their individual weight with tusks that could impale them in an instant. Yet, instead of chaos, you witness something unprecedented in the natural world. 30 individuals moving with choreographed precision, each playing a specific role in a complex strategy that will bring down this giant through pure cooperation. This moment represents the emergence of humanity's most powerful survival tool, the ability to coordinate complex group activities towards shared goals. While other species exhibited forms of cooperation, early humans developed collaborative capabilities that were qualitatively different from anything seen before in the natural world. The evolution of human cooperation wasn't gradual. It required fundamental changes in cognition, communication, and social organization that transformed the very nature of human existence. Archaeological evidence from multiple sites reveals that by 500,000 years ago, early humans were engaging in collaborative activities of unprecedented complexity and scale. The cognitive foundations of advanced cooperation required several revolutionary mental capabilities working in concert. Early humans had to develop the ability to understand others' mental states, predict their behavior, coordinate timing across multiple individuals, and maintain focus on shared goals despite individual interests and distractions. This represents a level of social cognition that approaches modern human capabilities. Language emergence played a crucial role in enabling complex cooperation. While direct evidence for early human language is impossible to preserve, the coordination visible in archaeological sites requires communication systems far more sophisticated than any other species possesses. The ability to share plans, coordinate timing, assign roles, and adapt strategies in real time all depend on advanced communication capabilities. The development of role specialization within cooperative activities marked a major advance in human social organization. Archaeological evidence shows that different individuals within groups began specializing in specific activities. Some focused on tool-making, others on hunting strategies, others on resource processing. This specialization created interdependence that strengthened group cohesion while improving overall efficiency. Cooperative hunting strategies evolved to exploit the unique advantages that groups provided over individual hunters. Rather than simply hunting in packs like wolves, early humans developed strategies that leveraged individual cognitive abilities within coordinated group frameworks. Archaeological sites reveal evidence of complex ambush strategies, coordinated drives, and multi-phase hunting operations that required planning and execution over extended periods. The famous site of Xinjiang in Germany provides spectacular evidence of cooperative hunting organization. Here, archaeologists discovered multiple wooden spears alongside the remains of numerous horses, indicating organized hunting activities that brought down multiple large animals through coordinated group efforts. The preservation of these 400,000-year-old spears reveals sophisticated weapon technology designed specifically for group hunting strategies. Resource sharing became increasingly systematic and complex as cooperation evolved. Archaeological evidence shows that successful hunts were followed by organized processing and distribution activities that ensured all group members received appropriate portions. This systematic sharing created social bonds and reciprocal obligations that strengthened group cohesion and survival chances. The development of cooperative tool production represents another major advancement in human collaboration. Sites from this period show evidence of organized tool-making activities where multiple individuals worked together to produce large quantities of standardized implements. This cooperation enabled more efficient production while facilitating the transmission of technical knowledge across group members. Cooperative defense strategies emerged as early humans faced threats from large predators and potentially hostile human groups. Archaeological evidence suggests that groups began coordinating defensive activities, sharing sentinel duties, and developing collective responses to dangers. This cooperation provided security advantages that enabled human groups to occupy territories that would have been too dangerous for individual families. The construction of shared shelters and communal spaces required unprecedented levels of cooperation and resource coordination. Sites like Terra Amata show evidence of organized construction activities where groups worked together to build substantial structures that housed multiple families. These cooperative construction projects required planning, resource gathering, role assignment, and sustained coordination over extended periods. Cooperative child-rearing practices began emerging as human development periods extended and parental investment increased. Archaeological evidence suggests that childcare was becoming a shared group responsibility rather than purely individual parental duty. This cooperative approach to child rearing provided advantages in terms of education, protection, and resource allocation that improved survival rates for human offspring. Information sharing became a crucial component of cooperative strategies. Early humans developed systems for sharing knowledge about resource locations, environmental conditions, animal behavior, and potential dangers. This information sharing created collective intelligence that far exceeded individual capabilities and provided survival advantages that benefited entire groups. The emergence of leadership and decision-making structures facilitated increasingly complex cooperative activities. Archaeological evidence suggests that groups began developing formal and informal leadership roles that coordinated group activities and resolved conflicts. These leadership structures enabled larger groups to function effectively while maintaining cooperation among individuals with potentially competing interests. Cooperative problem-solving capabilities enabled early human groups to address challenges that would have been impossible for individuals to solve alone. Complex challenges like crossing dangerous terrain, exploiting new resources, or responding to environmental changes required coordinated group efforts that leveraged diverse individual capabilities and knowledge. The development of reciprocal exchange systems created long-term cooperative relationships that extended beyond immediate group members. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans were engaging in material exchanges across substantial distances, indicating cooperative relationships that spanned multiple groups and territories. These exchange networks created mutual dependencies that promoted peaceful cooperation over conflict. Conflict resolution mechanisms became essential as group size and cooperation complexity increased. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans developed cultural practices and social institutions for managing disputes and maintaining group harmony. The ability to resolve conflicts without group dissolution was crucial for maintaining the cooperative relationships that group survival depended upon. Cultural transmission of cooperative strategies enabled successful cooperation methods to spread and persist across generations. Unlike other species, where cooperation was primarily instinctual, early humans developed cultural systems that could adapt and improve cooperative strategies based on experience and environmental changes. The emergence of moral systems and social norms supported increasingly complex cooperation by creating shared expectations and behavioral standards. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans were developing cultural practices that reinforced cooperative behavior while discouraging free-riding and antisocial activities. Cooperative innovation became a major driver of technological and cultural advancement. Groups that could effectively coordinate their creative efforts developed new technologies, strategies, and cultural practices more rapidly than groups that relied primarily on individual innovation. This cooperative innovation created positive feedback loops that accelerated human development. By the end of this period, early humans had developed cooperative capabilities that enabled them to function as superorganisms, coordinated groups whose collective capabilities far exceeded the sum of individual abilities. This transformation from individualistic survival to cooperative group living represents one of the most significant transitions in human evolution and established the foundation for all subsequent cultural and technological development. The mastery of cooperation provided early humans with adaptive advantages that enabled them to survive environmental challenges, exploit new territories, and develop increasingly complex technologies. This cooperative revolution established humanity as a fundamentally different kind of species, one whose survival and success depended not on individual capabilities, but on collective intelligence and coordinated action. Chapter 7. Masters of the Material World. You're standing in a workshop that existed 300,000 years ago. watching as skilled artisans transform raw materials into technologies that would have seemed impossible just millennia before. Delicate bone needles lie alongside hafted spears. Carefully shaped wooden tools rest near intricately flaked stone implements. And containers made from gourds and animal skins hold processed pigments and adhesives. This isn't just toolmaking, it's the birth of material science. The evolution from simple stone choppers to complex composite technologies represents one of the most remarkable transformations in human history. By this period, early humans had developed sophisticated understanding of material properties, engineering principles, and manufacturing techniques that enabled them to create tools and technologies far beyond what any individual materials could provide alone. Composite tool technology marked a revolutionary advancement in human engineering capabilities. Rather than relying on single materials, early humans began combining stone, wood, bone, sinew, and organic adhesives to create implements with properties that exceeded those of any individual component. Archaeological sites from this period reveal spear points hafted to wooden shafts with plant-based adhesives, creating weapons with optimal weight distribution, penetration capability, and structural integrity. The development of hafting technologies required understanding of multiple engineering principles working together. Early humans had to select appropriate woods with specific grain orientations, shape them to precise tolerances, create adhesives that would maintain bonds under stress, and design attachment methods that could be repaired and modified as needed. This level of engineering sophistication approaches that of modern craftspeople. Adhesive technology represents one of the most underappreciated innovations in human technological development. Archaeological evidence from sites like Hunnic in Germany shows that early humans were producing birch bark tar through controlled pyrolysis, a process that requires maintaining specific temperatures and atmospheric conditions to convert organic materials into effective bonding agents. This represents sophisticated understanding of chemical processes and temperature control. The production of birch bark tar required multi-step processes that had to be planned and executed with precision. Early humans had to gather appropriate raw materials, construct specialized firing structures, maintain controlled combustion conditions for extended periods, and process the resulting tar into usable form. The complexity of this process indicates that technological knowledge was being transmitted culturally with remarkable fidelity. Bone tool technology evolved from simple expedient use to sophisticated manufacturing processes that exploited the unique properties of different skeletal elements. Early humans learned to select specific bones based on their structural properties, developed techniques for shaping bone through grinding and carving, and created specialized bone implements for tasks ranging from high processing to precision cutting. The production of bone needles represents a pinnacle of ancient craftsmanship. These implements, some as small as modern sewing needles, required extraordinary skill to manufacture. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans were creating needles with precisely sized eyes, smooth surfaces, and sharp points that enabled sophisticated textile production. The level of manual dexterity and tool control required approaches that of modern precision manufacturing. Textile technology emerged as early humans developed capabilities for processing plant and animal fibers into useful materials. While direct evidence for ancient textiles is rare due to organic decomposition, indirect evidence suggests that early humans were creating cordage, nets, baskets, and possibly woven fabrics. These technologies required understanding of fiber properties, twisting techniques, and structural engineering principles. The development of container technologies enabled new forms of resource management and transportation. Early humans learned to create waterproof containers from animal skins, carved vessels from wood and bone, and possibly ceramic containers from fired clay. These technologies enabled food storage, water transportation, and material processing that greatly expanded human logistical capabilities. Fire hardening techniques allowed early humans to modify the properties of organic materials through controlled heating processes. Archaeological evidence shows that wooden tools were being deliberately hardened through fire treatment, creating implements with improved durability and effectiveness. This technique required understanding of temperature control and material science principles that enabled precise modification of material properties. Heat treatment of stone tools represents another major advancement in material processing technology. Archaeological evidence from multiple sites shows that early humans were heating specific types of stone to improve their flaking properties and tool performance. This process required understanding of thermal shock principles, temperature control, and the relationship between heat treatment and material properties. The production of specialized cutting implements reached extraordinary levels of sophistication during this period. Archaeological sites reveal stone tools with cutting edges sharper than modern surgical scalpels, demonstrating mastery of pressure flaking techniques that enabled precisely controlled tool production. The consistency and quality of these implements indicates that toolmaking had become a highly skilled craft requiring years of training and practice. Projectile technology evolved from simple thrown implements to sophisticated, engineered systems that multiplied human force and accuracy. The development of spear throwers and ladles enabled early humans to launch projectiles with dramatically increased velocity and range. These devices required understanding of leverage principles, optimal weight distribution, and ergonomic design that maximized throwing efficiency. Trap and snare technology enabled early humans to capture prey without direct confrontation, greatly expanding their hunting capabilities. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans were creating deadfalls, pitfall traps, and possibly snares that could capture animals ranging from small game to large ungulates. These technologies required understanding of animal behavior, structural engineering, and trigger mechanisms. The emergence of artistic production alongside utilitarian technologies indicates that early humans were developing aesthetic sensibilities and symbolic communication capabilities. Archaeological sites from this period contain carved objects, decorated tools, and processed pigments that appear to serve symbolic rather than purely functional purposes. This represents the emergence of human symbolic culture and artistic expression. Pigment processing technologies enabled early humans to create coloring materials for body decoration, tool marking, and possibly symbolic communication. Archaeological evidence shows sophisticated techniques for grinding, mixing, and applying mineral pigments, indicating that color production had become a specialized technological capability with cultural significance. Regional technological variations began emerging as different human populations adapted their material technologies to local environmental conditions and resource availability. These variations demonstrate the flexibility of human technological systems and their ability to adapt to diverse ecological challenges while maintaining core technological capabilities. The development of repair and maintenance technologies enabled early humans to extend the useful life of their tools and equipment. Archaeological evidence shows sophisticated techniques for resharpening tools, repairing hafted implements, and recycling materials from worn-out equipment. This capability greatly increased the efficiency of material use and reduced the resource investment required for technology maintenance. Quality control systems emerged as early humans developed standards for tool production and performance evaluation. Archaeological assemblages show remarkable consistency in tool dimensions, surface finish, and performance characteristics, indicating that early humans had developed systematic approaches to maintaining technological standards across production batches. Knowledge transmission systems became increasingly sophisticated as technological complexity increased. The production of advanced composite tools required knowledge that could only be transmitted through extended apprenticeship and hands-on instruction. Archaeological evidence suggests that specialized, Knowledge was being preserved and transmitted across generations through cultural systems that ensured technological continuity. Innovation processes became more systematic as early humans developed approaches for improving existing technologies and developing new solutions to technological challenges. Archaeological sequences show gradual refinement of technological designs over time, indicating that early humans were engaging in deliberate technological development rather than relying purely on accidental discovery. By the end of this period, early humans had developed material technologies that enabled them to create tools and equipment that were functionally equivalent to those used by historic hunter-gatherer societies. This technological sophistication provided the foundation for human expansion into diverse environments and established patterns of innovation that would continue throughout human history. The mastery of material science and engineering represented humanity's transformation from tool users to tool creators. This capability enabled early humans to transcend the limitations of their biological inheritance and create technologies that extended their capabilities far beyond what evolution alone could provide. Chapter 8. When minds evolved. In a cave in Spain, 400,000 years ago, something unprecedented is happening. An early human carefully selects a piece of red ochre, grinds it against a stone surface, and deliberately applies the resulting pigment to their skin in a specific pattern. This simple act represents a cognitive revolution that separates humans from every other species that has ever existed. The birth of symbolic thinking and abstract consciousness. The emergence of modern human cognition represents the most dramatic transformation in the history of life on Earth. Unlike the gradual changes that characterize most evolutionary processes, the development of human cognitive capabilities appears to have accelerated rapidly during a relatively brief period, fundamentally altering the nature of human existence and Earth's ecological systems. Archaeological evidence for advanced cognitive abilities begins appearing in the archaeological record around 500,000 years ago and accelerates dramatically after 200,000 years ago. This evidence includes symbolic artifacts, artistic productions, complex tool technologies, and organized living spaces that require cognitive capabilities approaching those of modern humans. The development of symbolic thinking marked the most crucial cognitive advancement in human evolution. The ability to use objects, marks, and sounds to represent concepts that exist beyond immediate physical reality enabled entirely new forms of communication, planning, and cultural transmission. This cognitive capability transformed humans from reactive animals responding to immediate stimuli into proactive beings capable of operating in abstract conceptual frameworks. Language evolution accelerated during this period, driven by increasing social complexity and technological sophistication. While direct evidence for ancient language is impossible to preserve, the coordination visible in archaeological assemblages requires communication capabilities far beyond any other species. The ability to discuss abstract concepts, plan complex activities, and transmit detailed technical knowledge all depend on sophisticated linguistic capabilities. The archaeological evidence for symbolic behavior includes deliberately shaped objects that appear to serve non-utilitarian purposes, processed pigments that may have been used for body decoration or marking, and organized spatial arrangements that suggest symbolic significance. These artifacts indicate that early humans were beginning to operate in symbolic realms that transcended immediate practical concerns. Working memory capabilities underwent dramatic expansion during this period, enabling early humans to maintain awareness of multiple variables simultaneously while executing complex tasks. The production of advanced stone tools requires tracking numerous interdependent factors: core preparation, angle control, force modulation, and sequence planning, all while maintaining focus on the final desired outcome. Executive function abilities evolved to support increasingly complex planning and decision-making processes. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans were engaging in activities that required sustained attention, goal maintenance, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control over extended periods. These cognitive capabilities enabled systematic approaches to technology production, resource management, and social coordination. Spatial reasoning capabilities reached extraordinary levels of sophistication as early humans developed three-dimensional visualization abilities that enabled complex tool production and environmental navigation. The creation of lava stone tools requires mental rotation of three-dimensional objects, understanding of geometric relationships, and prediction of fracture patterns that approach modern human spatial abilities. Social cognition underwent revolutionary development as group sizes increased and social interactions became more complex. Early humans developed theory of mind capabilities that enabled them to understand others' mental states, predict behavior, and coordinate activities through shared intentionality. These social cognitive abilities provided the foundation for complex cooperation and cultural transmission. Learning and memory systems evolved to support the acquisition and retention of increasingly complex cultural knowledge. Early humans developed capabilities for observational learning, imitation, and instruction that enabled rapid transmission of technological and social innovations across individuals and generations. This cultural learning capacity created positive feedback loops that accelerated cognitive and technological development. Abstract reasoning abilities emerged as early humans began operating with concepts that extended beyond immediate sensory experience. The production of standardized tools across vast geographic regions requires abstract mental templates that guide production activities. The consistency of tool forms across time and space indicates that early humans were working with shared abstract concepts that transcended individual variation. Problem-solving capabilities became increasingly sophisticated as early humans encountered novel challenges that required creative solutions. Archaeological evidence shows technological innovations that appear to represent solutions to specific environmental or practical problems, indicating that early humans were engaging in deliberate problem-solving processes rather than relying purely on trial and error. Innovation processes became more systematic as early humans developed approaches for improving existing technologies and creating new solutions to emerging challenges. Archaeological sequences show gradual refinement and occasional revolutionary improvements in technological systems, suggesting that early humans were engaging in deliberate innovation activities. Cognitive flexibility enabled early humans to adapt their thinking and behavior to novel situations and changing environmental conditions. The successful expansion into diverse environments required the ability to rapidly develop new strategies, modify existing approaches, and integrate new information into existing knowledge systems. Metacognitive abilities emerged as early humans developed awareness of their own thinking processes and the ability to monitor and control their cognitive activities. The production of complex technologies requires awareness of one's own skill level, recognition of error patterns, and systematic approaches to skill improvement. Temporal reasoning capabilities expanded dramatically as early humans developed the ability to plan activities extending far into the future and learn from past experiences in sophisticated ways. Archaeological evidence shows resource stockpiling, seasonal preparation activities, and long-term technological projects that require complex temporal reasoning abilities. Causal reasoning abilities enabled early humans to understand complex cause and effect, relationships that supported technological innovation and environmental manipulation. The development of composite technologies requires understanding of how different materials and design features interact to produce desired performance characteristics. Pattern recognition capabilities reached extraordinary levels that enabled early humans to detect subtle environmental cues, predict animal behavior, and recognize complex technological relationships. Successful hunting and navigation in ancient environments required pattern recognition abilities that approached or exceeded those of modern humans. Attention control systems evolved to support sustained focus on complex tasks while maintaining awareness of environmental threats and opportunities. The production of advanced technologies requires sustained attention over extended periods while maintaining vigilance for potential dangers or resource opportunities. Cognitive integration abilities enabled early humans to coordinate multiple cognitive systems simultaneously while executing complex, multi-step activities. The successful coordination of group hunting activities requires integration of spatial reasoning, social cognition, working memory, and motor control systems in real time. The development of aesthetic sensibilities indicates that early humans were beginning to evaluate objects and experiences based on abstract criteria beyond immediate functional utility. Archaeological evidence for artistic production and decorative objects suggests that early humans were developing cognitive frameworks for beauty, symmetry, and symbolic meaning. Cultural cognition emerged as early humans developed the ability to think within shared cultural frameworks that provided common conceptual foundations for group activities. The transmission of complex technological knowledge requires shared cognitive frameworks that enable effective communication and coordination across individuals. By the end of this period, early humans had developed cognitive capabilities that enabled them to operate in abstract conceptual realms, plan complex activities extending far into the future, and coordinate sophisticated group activities through shared symbolic systems. These cognitive advances provided the foundation for all subsequent human cultural and technological development. The emergence of modern human cognition represents humanity's final major evolutionary transformation. Combined with fire mastery, stone tool technology, survival strategies, hunting capabilities, cooperation systems, and material technologies, advanced cognition enabled early humans to transcend their biological limitations and become a fundamentally new kind of life form on Earth. Chapter 9. The Social Revolution Around a Flickering Fire in the Levantin Hills. 100,000 years ago, you witness a gathering unlike anything the world has ever seen. Representatives from distant communities, some traveling hundreds of kilometers, have come together to exchange not just goods, but stories, knowledge, and innovations. Shell beads from the Mediterranean coast change hands for exotic stones from inland quarries, while techniques for toolmaking and hunting strategies spread through animated discussions and demonstrations. This scene represents the emergence of humanity's greatest survival innovation, complex social networks that transcended individual groups and created collective intelligence spanning vast territories and multiple generations. The development of these social systems transformed humans from isolated groups struggling for individual survival into interconnected societies, capable of accumulating and sharing knowledge on an unprecedented scale. The expansion of social networks beyond immediate kinship groups marked a fundamental departure from the social organization of all other species. While other animals formed alliances and cooperative relationships, early humans developed social systems that could maintain connections across distances and time periods that exceeded any individual's direct experience. Archaeological evidence for these expanding social networks comes from the distribution of materials and technologies across vast geographic regions. Sites throughout Africa, Europe, and Asia show evidence of material exchanges that could only have occurred through complex social relationships spanning hundreds or thousands of kilometers. The consistency of technological traditions across these distances indicates that information was flowing through social networks with remarkable efficiency. The development of trade relationships created the first economic systems in human history. Early humans began producing goods specifically for exchange rather than immediate consumption. indicating understanding of value, demand, and reciprocal relationships that extended beyond immediate social groups. Archaeological sites show evidence of specialized production activities that generated surpluses specifically intended for trade. The famous site of Blombos Cave in South Africa provides spectacular evidence of early symbolic and social complexity. Here, archaeologists discovered intricately carved pieces of ochre and carefully shaped shell beads dating back 75,000 years. These artifacts represent some of the earliest evidence for symbolic communication and artistic expression, indicating that early humans were developing complex cultural practices that reinforced social identity and group membership. Social stratification began emerging as early human societies developed specialized roles and differential access to resources and status. Archaeological evidence suggests that some individuals gained prestige through specialized skills like tool-making, hunting prowess, or spiritual leadership. This social differentiation created more complex community structures while maintaining the cooperation necessary for group survival. The emergence of leadership systems enabled larger groups to function effectively while maintaining social cohesion. Archaeological sites show evidence of organized activities that required coordination and decision-making beyond what could be achieved through purely egalitarian systems. The development of temporary and permanent leadership roles provided social frameworks for managing increasingly complex community activities. Conflict resolution mechanisms became essential as group sizes increased and social interactions became more complex. Early human societies developed cultural practices and social institutions for managing disputes, allocating resources, and maintaining community harmony. The ability to resolve conflicts without group dissolution was crucial for maintaining the social cooperation that survival depended upon. Ritual and ceremonial practices emerged as mechanisms for reinforcing social bonds and cultural identity. Archaeological evidence from sites like Catastrophe Cave in Israel shows deliberate burials with grave goods and organized spatial arrangements that suggest ceremonial significance. These practices indicate that early humans were developing spiritual and cultural frameworks that provided meaning and social cohesion beyond immediate survival concerns. Information transmission systems became increasingly sophisticated as social networks expanded and cultural knowledge accumulated. Early human societies developed methods for preserving and transmitting complex information across generations through oral traditions, practical instruction, and cultural practices. This cultural inheritance system enabled knowledge accumulation that far exceeded what any individual could learn through personal experience. The development of cultural norms and social expectations provided frameworks for predictable social behavior that enabled cooperation among individuals who might not have direct personal relationships. These social norms created shared expectations that facilitated trade, cooperation, and peaceful interaction across social boundaries. Marriage and kinship systems evolved to create alliances and maintain social connections across groups and generations. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans were developing complex kinship systems that tracked relationships across multiple generations and facilitated exchanges between communities. These systems created social networks that enhanced survival prospects through resource sharing and mutual support. Education systems emerged as early human societies developed formal and informal methods for transmitting knowledge and skills to younger generations. The complexity of technologies and social systems required educational processes that extended far beyond simple imitation and observation. Archaeological evidence suggests that specialized knowledge was being transmitted through structured learning experiences that could take years to complete. Cultural identity markers began appearing as different human groups developed distinctive practices, technologies, and symbolic systems that distinguish them from neighboring communities. Archaeological assemblages show regional variations in tool styles, decorative practices, and material culture that appear to represent emerging cultural traditions and group identities. Social memory systems developed to preserve and transmit cultural knowledge across generations. Early human societies created practices for maintaining cultural continuity, preserving important information, and commemorating significant events that shaped community identity and knowledge systems. The emergence of reciprocity systems created social bonds that extended beyond immediate family groups and enabled resource sharing across larger communities. Archaeological evidence shows organized systems for sharing food, tools, and materials that created mutual obligations and enhanced survival prospects for all participants. Communication systems became increasingly sophisticated as social complexity increased. The coordination visible in archaeological assemblages requires communication capabilities that enable planning, instruction, negotiation, and cultural transmission across individuals and groups. The development of complex symbolic communication provided the foundation for all subsequent cultural development. Social innovation processes emerged as early human communities developed systematic approaches for creating and adopting new social practices, technologies, and cultural systems. The rapid spread of innovations across human populations indicates that early societies had developed mechanisms for recognizing, evaluating, and adopting beneficial changes to their social and technological systems. Gender-based role systems evolved as early human societies developed specialized activities and social functions that were allocated based on biological differences, cultural preferences, and practical considerations. Archaeological evidence suggests that different activities became associated with different social groups, creating complementary social systems that enhanced overall community capabilities. Age-based role systems emerged as early human societies recognized the different capabilities and knowledge possessed by individuals at different life stages. These systems created frameworks for utilizing the experience of older individuals, training younger community members, and managing the transition of knowledge and leadership across generations. Social enforcement mechanisms developed to maintain community standards and discourage behavior that threatened group survival and cohesion. Early human societies created cultural practices and social institutions that rewarded cooperation and altruism while discouraging selfishness and antisocial behavior. Intergroup relationships became increasingly important as human populations expanded and communities began encountering each other more frequently. Early human societies developed diplomatic practices, alliance systems, and conflict management approaches that enabled peaceful coexistence and beneficial exchanges between different communities. By the end of this period, early humans had developed social systems of unprecedented complexity that enabled them to function as interconnected networks spanning vast territories and multiple generations. These social innovations created collective intelligence capabilities that far exceeded what any individual community could achieve in isolation. The social revolution represents humanity's transformation from small, isolated groups to interconnected societies, capable of accumulating and sharing knowledge across space and time. This social complexity provided the foundation for all subsequent human cultural development and established the patterns of cooperation and cultural transmission that enabled human civilization. Chapter 10. The Great Expansion. Standing on the cliffs of Gibraltar 45,000 years ago, you witness one of the most remarkable moments in the history of life on Earth. Small groups of modern humans gaze across the narrow strait toward Africa, the continent their species called home for hundreds of thousands of years. But they're not looking backward. They're looking forward toward an unprecedented expansion that will see humans colonize every habitable continent within a few tens of thousands of years. The Great Human Expansion represents the most rapid and comprehensive colonization event in the history of complex life. Unlike other species that slowly adapted to new environments through biological evolution over millions of years, humans use their cultural and technological capabilities to rapidly adapt to virtually every terrestrial environment on the planet. The timing of this expansion coincides with major advances in human technological and cultural capabilities. Archaeological evidence shows that the populations participating in global expansion possessed sophisticated tool technologies, complex social organization, and cultural systems that enabled rapid adaptation to novel environments. This wasn't just migration, it was active colonization, using advanced human capabilities. The expansion out of Africa required crossing significant geographic barriers that had previously contained human populations within familiar territories. The successful negotiation of deserts, mountain ranges, and water barriers demonstrates that expanding human populations possess navigation skills, logistical capabilities, and environmental knowledge that enabled them to traverse challenging terrain that had never been crossed by human populations. The colonization of Europe represents one of the most dramatic examples of human adaptability and technological sophistication. European environments during this period were dramatically different from anything humans had previously encountered. Dense forests, complex river systems, seasonal climate variations, and entirely new sets of plants and animals. Success required rapid development of new technologies, hunting strategies, and survival techniques. Archaeological sites across Europe show evidence of remarkable innovation and adaptation as expanding human populations encountered novel challenges. Within a few thousand years of arrival, European populations had developed specialized hunting techniques for European animals, adapted their tool technologies to local materials, and created shelter and clothing systems appropriate for European climates. The expansion into Asia involved traversing some of the most challenging terrain on Earth. Human populations successfully crossed mountain ranges, deserts, and river systems that posed formidable barriers to movement. The diversity of environments encountered in Asia required unprecedented adaptability and innovation, as human groups adapted to everything from tropical forests to Arctic tundra. The colonization of Australia represents perhaps the most remarkable achievement in the entire expansion process. Reaching Australia required sophisticated boat-building technology and navigation skills that enabled ocean crossings of at least 65 kilometers of open water. This technological achievement demonstrates that expanding human populations possessed maritime capabilities that far exceeded those of any other terrestrial species. The successful settlement of Australia also required rapid adaptation to one of the world's most unique ecosystems. Australian plants and animals were unlike anything humans had previously encountered, requiring development of entirely new hunting strategies, food processing techniques, and environmental knowledge. Archaeological evidence shows that human populations successfully adapted to Australian conditions within a few thousand years of arrival. The expansion into the Americas represents the final stage of human global colonization. The successful crossing of Beringia and subsequent spread throughout North and South America demonstrates that human populations possess cold weather survival techniques, large game hunting capabilities, and environmental knowledge that enabled them to thrive in some of the world's most challenging environments. The rapid spread throughout the Americas required extraordinary adaptability as human populations encountered environments ranging from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests. Within a few thousand years, human populations had successfully colonized environments from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego, demonstrating unprecedented adaptive capabilities. The technologies that enable global expansion represent the culmination of hundreds of thousands of years of human innovation and cultural development. Expanding populations possessed sophisticated tool technologies, clothing and shelter systems, hunting and gathering strategies, and social organization that enabled them to rapidly adapt to novel environments. Boat-building technologies were crucial for successful expansion into island environments and across water barriers. Archaeological evidence shows that expanding human populations developed sophisticated watercraft that enabled long-distance ocean travel and successful colonization of remote islands. These maritime technologies required understanding of boat design, navigation, and ocean conditions that enabled unprecedented exploration capabilities. Navigation techniques enabled expanding human populations to traverse vast, unknown territories and successfully locate resources and suitable habitats. The successful colonization of remote environments demonstrates that human populations possessed sophisticated methods for determining direction, estimating distances, and navigating using environmental cues and celestial observations. Hunting technologies adapted rapidly to exploit new prey species encountered during expansion. Archaeological evidence shows that expanding populations quickly developed specialized hunting techniques for animals they had never previously encountered. This technological adaptability enabled successful colonization of environments with entirely different animal communities. Food processing techniques evolved to exploit new plant and animal resources encountered during expansion. The successful colonization of environments with unfamiliar food sources required rapid development of processing methods that could extract nutrition from novel resources while avoiding toxic materials. Social organization systems adapted to support long-distance migration and rapid colonization of new territories. The successful expansion required social systems that could maintain group cohesion during difficult migrations, coordinate exploration activities, and rapidly establish functioning communities in new environments. Cultural transmission systems enabled expanding populations to rapidly share information about new environments, successful adaptations, and effective strategies. The speed of successful adaptation during expansion demonstrates that human populations possessed sophisticated methods for sharing critical survival information across groups and generations. Environmental impact of human expansion became apparent almost immediately as human populations encountered ecosystems that had never been exposed to human hunting pressure. Archaeological evidence shows that human arrival in many regions coincided with dramatic changes in animal populations and ecosystem structure. The extinction of megafauna in many regions coincided closely with human arrival, suggesting that human hunting pressure had immediate and dramatic effects on animal populations that had no previous experience with human predators. These extinctions demonstrate the immediate ecological impact of human technological and hunting capabilities. Ecosystem modification through fire use became a major tool for environmental management, as expanding human populations used controlled burning to create favorable hunting conditions and encourage the growth of useful plant species. This environmental manipulation enabled human populations to improve the productivity and suitability of new environments. Climate adaptation demonstrated human ability to successfully colonize environments with climate conditions far outside their African evolutionary experience. Successful adaptation to Arctic, desert, and high-altitude environments demonstrates the effectiveness of human cultural and technological adaptation systems. Regional differentiation began emerging as human populations adapted to different environments and developed distinctive cultural and technological traditions. Archaeological evidence shows that different regions began developing characteristic tool styles, hunting strategies, and cultural practices that reflected adaptation to local conditions. Population growth accelerated as expanding human populations successfully adapted to new environments and exploited previously unavailable resources. The successful colonization of diverse environments enabled dramatic increases in total human population as new territories provided additional carrying capacity. By the end of the expansion period, human populations had successfully colonized virtually every habitable environment on Earth and established the foundation for all subsequent human cultural and technological development. The Great Expansion represents humanity's final transformation from a regional African species into a global force capable of adapting to and modifying virtually any terrestrial environment. Chapter 11. The Legacy of Ancient Innovation in a Sterile Laboratory in Leipzig, Germany. Paleogeneticist Svante Pääbo carefully extracts DNA from a 40,000-year-old Neanderthal bone fragment, its surface weathered by millennia but still holding secrets that would revolutionize our understanding of human evolution. Under powerful microscopes and through sophisticated genetic sequencing techniques, the ancient molecular code begins to reveal something extraordinary that challenges everything we thought we knew about our ancestors. Modern humans carry traces of Neanderthal DNA, evidence that our forebears didn't simply replace earlier human species through competition or conflict. They absorbed them, learning from their technologies, adopting their survival strategies, and literally carrying their genetic innovations forward into the future. This groundbreaking discovery, first revealed in 2010 through the sequencing of ancient DNA from approximately 40,000-year-old Neanderthal specimens, illuminates the final and perhaps most crucial chapter of early human evolution and reveals how ancient innovations continue to shape our modern world in ways both visible and hidden. The genetic evidence shows that the percentage of Neanderthal DNA in modern humans is 0 or close to 0 in people from African populations, and is about 1 to 2% in people of European or Asian background, indicating that this genetic integration occurred after modern humans left Africa and encountered Neanderthal populations already established in Eurasia. But the implications extend far beyond mere percentages of genetic material. Recent research has revealed that Neanderthals have 2.5 to 3.7% human ancestry, suggesting a complex pattern of bidirectional gene flow that occurred over a period of mixing that was quite complex and may have taken a long time, with different groups separating during the 6,000-year period of overlap. This wasn't a simple encounter between two species, but rather a prolonged period of interaction, cooperation, and technological exchange that fundamentally shaped the trajectory of human development. The integration of different human lineages represents the culmination of hundreds of thousands of years of parallel innovation and adaptation across diverse environments and ecological challenges. As modern humans expanded across the globe in successive waves of migration, they encountered other human species, Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, that had been developing their own sophisticated technologies and survival strategies over hundreds of thousands of years. These encounters weren't characterized by simple replacement through superior technology or violent conflict, as earlier theories suggested, but rather by complex interactions involving technology transfer, cultural exchange, and genetic integration. That created hybrid populations, carrying the best innovations from multiple lineages. The Neanderthal legacy provides perhaps the most powerful and well-documented example of how ancient innovations directly influenced modern human development and capabilities. Neanderthals had spent hundreds of thousands of years developing sophisticated technologies specifically adapted for surviving in the harsh conditions of Ice Age Europe. Their innovations included advanced tool production techniques that created more efficient and durable implements than those used by early modern humans. sophisticated cold-weather clothing systems that enabled survival in subarctic conditions, and specialized hunting strategies optimized for European megafauna and seasonal resource availability. These weren't primitive technologies gradually improved upon by superior modern humans, but rather highly refined systems that in many cases surpassed early modern human capabilities. Neanderthal tools showed superior standardization, more efficient production methods, and better adaptation to specific environmental conditions than contemporary modern human implements. Their clothing systems, inferred from archaeological evidence and environmental requirements, must have incorporated complex techniques for creating weatherproof garments, insulation systems, and protective gear that enabled survival in conditions that would have been lethal without proper technological support. Archaeological evidence from transitional sites like Châtelperronien in France provides compelling documentation of rapid technological advancement following contact between modern humans and Neanderthals. Tool technologies that had remained relatively stable for thousands of years suddenly show dramatic improvements and innovations that strongly suggest knowledge transfer and cultural exchange between different human populations. The improvements aren't gradual refinements, but rather sudden jumps in capability that indicate the integration of different technological traditions. The evidence shows modern human tools becoming more sophisticated and standardized after contact with Neanderthal populations, while late Neanderthal sites show adoption of modern human innovations in symbolic behavior and artistic expression. This bidirectional exchange created technological fusion that combined the environmental adaptations developed by Neanderthals with the social innovations and symbolic capabilities that characterize modern human populations. But the legacy of ancient human interaction extends far beyond tool technology into the realm of cognitive and cultural capabilities. The development of art and symbolic expression reached unprecedented sophistication as human populations established themselves across diverse environments and began creating the first complex cultural systems that would characterize later human civilization. Cave paintings at sites like Lascaux, featuring over 600 parietal wall paintings covering interior walls and ceilings, and Altamira, with paintings applied during the Upper Paleolithic around 36,000 years ago, demonstrate artistic capabilities that rival modern human artistic expression in their sophistication, complexity, and emotional impact. These aren't crude scratches or simple representations, but rather masterworks of artistic expression that indicate cognitive and cultural capabilities virtually identical to those of contemporary populations. The creation of these artistic masterpieces required far more than individual inspiration or casual expression. Cave art from the Ice Age, roughly between 40,000 and 14,000 years ago, with about 400 known decorated sites, represents a systematic cultural phenomenon that demonstrates sophisticated symbolic thinking, complex cultural transmission systems, and highly developed social organization capable of supporting elaborate cultural projects that required significant resource allocation and specialized knowledge. The technical sophistication of these ancient artworks reveals advanced understanding of pigment production, surface preparation, artistic composition, and preservation techniques. Cave artists used a variety of techniques such as finger tracing, modeling in clay, engravings, bas-relief sculpture, hand stencils, and paintings done in 2 or 3 colors. The pigments were carefully prepared from mineral sources, mixed with binding agents, and applied using sophisticated techniques that created effects of shading, perspective, and movement that demonstrate advanced artistic knowledge and capabilities. The creation of elaborate cave paintings required careful planning, resource allocation, specialized knowledge about artistic techniques and materials, and social coordination that indicates highly developed cultural capabilities extending far beyond immediate survival concerns. These projects required communities to support individuals who could dedicate significant time and energy to artistic creation rather than direct subsistence activities, indicating surplus production capabilities and complex social organization that valued cultural expression alongside material survival. The symbolic content of cave art reveals sophisticated cognitive capabilities that included abstract thinking, symbolic representation, and complex cultural meaning systems. The animals depicted aren't simply realistic representations, but rather symbolic systems that incorporated spiritual beliefs, seasonal knowledge, hunting strategies, and cultural identity markers that functioned as complex communication systems for preserving and transmitting cultural knowledge across generations. Musical instruments and ceremonial objects from this period provide additional evidence for complex cultural practices that enhance social bonding and cultural identity. Archaeological sites contain precisely crafted bone flutes, decorated objects with no apparent practical function, and organized burial practices that suggest sophisticated spiritual and cultural frameworks that provided meaning and social cohesion beyond immediate survival concerns. These cultural innovations represent the emergence of distinctly human capabilities for creating meaning, beauty, and social connection that transcended biological necessity. The development of art, music, ceremony, and symbolic expression indicates that by this period, human populations had developed cognitive and cultural capabilities that enabled them to create rich inner lives and complex social relationships that went far beyond the survival-focused existence of earlier human ancestors. The transition to agriculture represents the final and most transformative development in the relationship between humans and their environment during this crucial period. Rather than simply adapting to existing natural ecosystems as their ancestors had done for millions of years, humans began actively modifying and managing environments to increase their productivity and suitability for human habitation. This transition marks humanity's transformation from ecosystem inhabitants to ecosystem engineers capable of reshaping natural systems to serve human purposes. Agricultural innovations didn't emerge from nothing but built directly upon environmental knowledge, tool technologies, and social organization systems that had been developing for hundreds of thousands of years of human adaptation to diverse environments. The techniques for plant cultivation, soil management, crop storage, and seasonal planning all derived from ancient knowledge about plant biology, seasonal cycles, and resource management that early humans had been accumulating since their earliest expansion out of Africa and subsequent adaptation to diverse ecological conditions. The development of systematic agriculture required sophisticated understanding of plant biology, including knowledge of growth cycles, reproductive systems, nutritional requirements, and environmental conditions necessary for successful cultivation. This knowledge couldn't be acquired quickly, but represented the accumulation of hundreds of thousands of years of observation, experimentation, and knowledge transmission about plant behavior and environmental relationships. Soil management techniques that enabled sustained agricultural production required understanding of soil composition, nutrient cycles, water management, and crop rotation principles that built upon ancient human knowledge about ecosystem functioning and resource management. Early agricultural populations had to develop techniques for maintaining soil fertility, controlling water access, and managing plant diseases that required sophisticated understanding of ecological relationships and environmental manipulation. The domestication of animals represents another application of ancient human capabilities for careful observation, systematic experimentation, and long-term planning that had been developing throughout human evolutionary history. The process of transforming wild animals into domestic partners required detailed understanding of animal behavior, breeding principles, nutrition requirements, and social management systems that built upon millions of years of human-animal interaction. And coevolution, the transformation of wolves into dogs, wild sheep and goats into domestic livestock, and wild cattle into managed herds, required systematic breeding programs that could only be accomplished through understanding of genetic inheritance, behavioral modification, and animal psychology that represented sophisticated biological knowledge. Accumulated over vast periods of time, settlement systems evolved from temporary camps and seasonal gathering sites to permanent villages as agricultural innovations provided the resource stability and surplus production necessary for sedentary lifestyles. These early settlements incorporated architectural principles, spatial organization systems, and social coordination mechanisms that derived directly from ancient human innovations in shelter construction and community organization that had been developing since the earliest human populations began creating structured living spaces. The transition to permanent settlements required innovations in construction techniques, community planning, resource management, and social organization that built upon hundreds of thousands of years of human experience in creating temporary and semi-permanent living spaces adapted to diverse environmental conditions and social requirements. Population growth accelerated dramatically as agricultural innovations enabled human communities to support much larger populations in smaller territories than had ever been possible under hunter-gatherer subsistence systems. The increased carrying capacity provided by agricultural systems enabled human populations to grow to levels that would have been impossible under earlier subsistence strategies, creating the demographic foundation for all subsequent human cultural and technological development. This population growth created positive feedback loops that accelerated innovation by providing larger pools of potential innovators, enabling specialization of roles and functions, and creating markets for new technologies and cultural innovations. Larger populations could support individuals who dedicated their time to technological innovation rather than direct subsistence activities, creating conditions that enabled rapid technological acceleration. Technological acceleration became possible as larger, more stable populations enabled specialization and innovation at unprecedented scales. Agricultural societies could support craftspeople, inventors, teachers, and other specialists whose innovations could be rapidly transmitted across larger populations and geographic areas, creating positive feedback loops that accelerated technological development beyond anything possible in smaller, more dispersed populations. The emergence of complex societies with hierarchical organization, specialized roles, and institutional structures represented the scaling up of social innovations that early humans had been developing for hundreds of thousands of years. The cooperation systems, leadership structures, conflict resolution mechanisms, and resource allocation systems that characterized early agricultural societies all derived from ancient human social innovations that had been refined through countless generations of group living and cooperative problem-solving. Trade networks expanded dramatically as agricultural societies generated surpluses that could be exchanged across vast distances, creating economic systems that connected diverse populations and enabled the rapid transmission of innovations, resources, and cultural practices across entire continents. These trade systems built upon social networks and exchange relationships that early human populations had been developing since their initial expansion out of Africa and subsequent colonization of diverse environments worldwide. The development of systematic exchange relationships required innovations in transportation, communication, quality control, and conflict resolution that built upon hundreds of thousands of years of human experience in creating cooperative relationships between diverse groups and populations. writing systems emerged as complex societies, required methods for recording and transmitting information across space and time with greater precision and permanence than was possible through oral communication alone. The development of symbolic representation systems for communication, built directly upon symbolic thinking capabilities that early humans had been developing for hundreds of thousands of years, as evidenced in cave art, ceremonial objects, and other forms of symbolic expression. Urban centers developed as agricultural surpluses enabled large populations to concentrate in specific locations, creating the first cities that incorporated spatial organization principles, infrastructure systems, and social coordination mechanisms that derived from hundreds of thousands of years of human innovation in community, organization, and environmental management. The scientific revolution represented the systematization of observational and experimental approaches that early humans had been using for survival and technological innovation since their earliest emergence as a distinct species. The methods of hypothesis formation, systematic testing, and knowledge accumulation that characterize modern science derive directly from ancient human approaches to understanding and manipulating their environment that had been developing throughout human evolutionary history. Modern technologies, from electronics to biotechnology, represent the continuation of innovation processes that began with the earliest human tool production and environmental manipulation. The systematic approaches to problem-solving, experimentation, and technological development that characterize modern innovation derive directly from cognitive and cultural capabilities that early humans developed hundreds of thousands of years ago during their initial adaptation to diverse environments and challenges. The timeline of agricultural development reveals the systematic nature of human innovation that built upon ancient knowledge systems accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years. The first agriculture appears to have developed at the closing of the last Pleistocene glacial period, or Ice Age, about 11,700 years ago, but this emergence wasn't sudden or accidental. Evidence suggests that one of the oldest transitions from hunting and gathering to agriculture has been identified as dating to between 14,500 and 12,000 years ago in Southwest Asia, indicating a gradual transition that required extensive experimentation and knowledge accumulation. The Neolithic Revolution started around 10,000 BC in the Fertile Crescent, a boomerang-shaped region of the Middle East where humans first took up farming. Shortly after, Stone Age humans in other parts of the world also began to practice agriculture, demonstrating that agricultural innovations spread rapidly once the foundational technologies and knowledge systems were established. This rapid diffusion indicates that the underlying cognitive and cultural capabilities necessary for agriculture had already been developed through hundreds of thousands of years of human adaptation and innovation. The complexity of early agricultural systems becomes apparent when examining the diversity of crops and animals that were simultaneously domesticated across different regions. By 4000 BC in Mehrgar, the domestication of numerous crops, including peas, sesame seeds, dates, and cotton, as well as a wide range of domestic animals, including the domestic Asian water buffalo, reveals sophisticated understanding of multiple biological systems and their integration into coherent agricultural systems that could support complex societies. Genetic studies show that goats and other livestock accompanied the westward spread of agriculture into Europe, helping to revolutionize Stone Age society, indicating that agricultural innovations weren't simply local adaptations, but rather systematic technologies that could be successfully transferred across vast geographic areas and diverse environmental conditions. The development of metalworking represents another crucial innovation that built directly upon ancient human capabilities while enabling unprecedented technological advancement. The transition from stone to metal tools required sophisticated understanding of geology, chemistry, and engineering that developed from ancient human knowledge about materials and their properties. Bronze tools and weapons soon replaced earlier stone versions. Ancient Sumerians in the Middle East may have been the first people to enter the Bronze Age, but this transition required complex, technological systems that could only emerge from societies that had already developed advanced capabilities in resource extraction, trade networks, and specialized craft production. Metalworkers developed advanced smelting techniques and specialized furnaces capable of reaching high temperatures. They cast bronze into molds to form axes, swords, spearheads, chisels, and intricate ornaments. Such innovations demanded skilled craftspeople who understood metal properties, representing a level of technological sophistication that required systematic knowledge transmission and specialized training systems. The Bronze Age was also marked by increased specialization and the invention of the wheel and the ox-drawn plow, innovations that enabled dramatic increases in productivity and efficiency across multiple domains of human activity. These weren't isolated inventions, but rather integrated technological systems that transformed transportation, agriculture, manufacturing, and warfare simultaneously. The emergence of complex societies during this period required innovations in social organization that built upon ancient human capabilities for cooperation, leadership, and conflict resolution, while scaling these capabilities to unprecedented levels of complexity and size. The development of hierarchical organizations, specialized roles, and institutional structures required sophisticated understanding of human psychology, social dynamics, and organizational management that derived from hundreds of thousands of years of human experience in group living and cooperative problem-solving. Writing systems that emerged during this period represent the culmination of human symbolic capabilities that had been developing since the earliest evidence of symbolic behavior in cave art, decorative objects, and ceremonial practices. One of the most significant developments is the appearance of writing, counting, and measuring length. Making a record of ideas and numbers completely changed how information was shared and was the beginning of arithmetic, astronomy, and large-scale commerce taught the development of systematic record-keeping. Mathematical calculation and abstract representation required cognitive capabilities that built directly upon ancient human innovations in symbolic thinking, pattern recognition, and knowledge transmission. These weren't entirely new capabilities, but rather the systematic application and enhancement of mental abilities that early humans had been developing throughout their evolutionary history. Urban planning and architectural innovations that characterized early cities incorporated principles of spatial organization, infrastructure design, and community coordination that derived from hundreds of thousands of years of human experience in creating structured living spaces adapted to diverse environmental conditions and social requirements. The complexity of early urban centers required integration of multiple technological and social systems that could only emerge from societies that had already developed sophisticated capabilities in resource management, social coordination, and environmental manipulation. The trade networks that connected early civilizations across vast distances built upon ancient human capabilities for creating cooperative relationships, establishing trust-based exchanges, and maintaining social connections across diverse populations and geographic areas. These commercial systems required innovations in transportation, communication, quality control, and conflict resolution that extended ancient human social technologies to unprecedented scales and complexity levels. The scientific and mathematical knowledge that emerged in early civilizations represented the systematization of observational and analytical approaches that early humans had been developing for hundreds of thousands of years. The methods of systematic observation, hypothesis testing, and knowledge accumulation that characterized early scientific traditions, derived directly from cognitive capabilities that early humans had developed for understanding and manipulating their environment during their initial adaptation to diverse ecological conditions. The remarkable success of early human innovations in enabling global colonization, technological development, and cultural complexity demonstrates the power of human creativity, cooperation, and adaptability that continues to characterize modern human societies and provides the foundation for addressing contemporary challenges and future opportunities. The legacy of early human innovations reminds us that the capabilities that enabled our species to dominate the planet, creativity, cooperation, environmental knowledge, and technological innovation, remain our greatest assets for creating sustainable and prosperous futures for all humanity. The continuous thread connecting ancient innovations to modern capabilities reveals that human progress isn't characterized by sudden, revolutionary breakthroughs, but rather by the systematic building upon accumulated knowledge and capabilities that extend back to the earliest human ancestors. Understanding this continuity provides both perspective on human achievement and confidence in human potential for addressing contemporary challenges through the same fundamental capabilities that enabled our species' remarkable success throughout history. As we reach the end of this extraordinary journey through deep time, you've witnessed the most remarkable transformation in the history of life on Earth. From that first moment when an early human reached toward fire instead of fleeing from it, to the global expansion that saw our species colonize every continent, early humans didn't just survive. They revolutionized the very nature of existence itself. The conquest of fire transformed humans from just another African mammal into the first species capable of extending their active hours, cooking their food, and reshaping their environment. The mastery of stone tools created humanity's first technology industry and established patterns of innovation that continue to this day. The development of sophisticated survival strategies enabled our ancestors to thrive in environments that should have been impossible for a tropical African species to inhabit. But perhaps most remarkably, early humans discovered that their greatest weapon wasn't any single innovation. It was their ability to cooperate, share knowledge, and build upon the discoveries of previous generations. This cultural evolution enabled humans to adapt to new challenges faster than biological evolution could ever allow. The hunting strategies that brought down woolly mammoths evolved into the full agricultural systems that feed billions today. The social networks that enabled survival in Ice Age Europe became the foundation for global civilization. The symbolic thinking that created the first art and ritual developed into the first art and ritual developed into the phallic thinking, the Nakuri scientific method that unlocks the secrets of the universe. Today, as we face unprecedented global challenges, climate change, resource depletion, social inequality, the story of early human innovation offers both inspiration and practical guidance. Our ancestors succeeded not because they were physically superior, but because they were creative, cooperative, and adaptable. They faced extinction-level challenges with nothing but their intelligence, determination, and willingness to work together. The DNA flowing through your veins carries the genetic legacy of survivors who conquered ice ages, volcanic winters, and predators that could kill them instantly. The technologies you use every day, from the controlled fires in your engines to the precisely shaped tools in your kitchen, represent direct descendants of innovations that began 2 million years ago on the African savanna. The greatest lesson of early human success is that seemingly impossible challenges become surmountable when human creativity, cooperation, and determination work together. Our ancestors transformed from vulnerable prey into master predators, not through individual heroism, but through collective intelligence and shared innovation. As we face the challenges of the future, we carry within us the same capabilities that enabled our ancestors to conquer fire, stone, and survival itself. Their legacy reminds us that no challenge is too great for human ingenuity, cooperation, and determination to overcome.